In this video, we will talk about task list item A-08, Assess and Interpret IOA. We'll begin our study on IOA by first talking about IOA for data that's obtained by event recording. The various methods for calculating IOA for data obtained by event recording are based on comparing the total count recorded by each observer, the counts tallied by each observer during small intervals of the measurement period, or by each observer's count of 1 or 0 on a trial-by-trial basis. There are 4 types of IOA methods for data obtained by event recording: total count IOA, mean count per interval, exact count per interval, and trial-by-trial IOA. Total count IOA is the simplest measure of IOA for data obtained by event recording. It compares the total count recorded by each observer per measurement period. Total count IOA is calculated by dividing one observer's data by another's data and multiplying by 100 to obtain a percentage. For example, suppose that an RBT in a clinical setting recorded that 4-year-old Lucas said no in response to an adult's instruction 9 times during a 30-minute observation period, and that a second observer recorded that Lucas said no 10 times during that same period. The total count IOA would be derived by dividing the smaller observation, 9, by the larger, 10, and multiplying by 100. Thus 9 divided by 10 times 100 is 90% agreement. The drawback of total count IOA is that it overestimates the extent of actual agreement. Even if 2 observers agree on the total number of behaviors, they may not have recorded the same instances of behavior. For example, perhaps the first observer in the Lucas example recorded all 10 instances of the target behavior in the first 10 minutes, and the second observer recorded 3 of the 9 instances during the first 10 minutes. The total count IOA is still 90%, but it is evident in this example that the observers did not record the same instances of the target behavior. Now we'll talk about mean count per interval IOA. In this method, the observation time is broken into smaller intervals. Each observer records each occurrence of the behavior in each interval. The agreement between observers in each interval is calculated. Then the mean count per interval is calculated from the agreement between each interval by adding the IOA from each interval, dividing by the total number of intervals, and multiplying by 100. Using this IOA method for data obtained by event recording can increase the likelihood that observers measured the same events. Let's look at an example. This displays a 30-minute observation period. The observation period was broken into 6 5-minute intervals, and for each interval, both observers tallied the number of occurrences of the target behavior. To calculate the mean count IOA per interval, we must first calculate the total count IOA for each interval. Then sum the IOA for each interval and divide it by the number of intervals and multiply by 100. Thus, there's 58% agreement. Notice that each observer recorded 10 occurrences of the target behavior in the observation period, yielding 100% total count IOA. However, the mean count per interval is nearly half the agreement. Exact count per interval is the most stringent IOA method based on data derived from event recording. It refers to the percentage of total intervals in which 2 observers recorded the same count. Exact count underestimates believability because both observers must have 100% agreement across several intervals to show overall agreement of a standard 80% or greater. Exact count per interval IOA is calculated by summing the intervals with 100% agreement divided by the total number of intervals and multiplying by 100. This displays a 30-minute observation period. The observation period was broken into 6 5-minute intervals. For each interval, both observers tallied the number of occurrences of the target behavior. To calculate the exact Count IOA per interval, we must first determine whether the two observers had 100% agreement in each interval. The two observers had 100% agreement in intervals 4 and 5. Therefore, we would calculate two intervals with 100% agreement divided by 6 total intervals, and then multiply that by 100, therefore resulting in 40% exact count per interval IOA. Trial-by-trial IOA data is used when observers are measuring discrete trial data. Data is typically recorded as a 0 or an X, whereas the 0 indicates that the behavior did occur and an X indicates that the behavior did not occur. Trial-by-trial IOA is calculated by dividing the number of trials in which the observers agreed that the behavior either occurred or did not occur by the total number of trials and multiplying by 100. In this example, two observers observed a student's behavior for 10 trials. The two observers agreed that the behavior occurred in 4 intervals and agreed that the behavior did not occur in 5 intervals. So in 9 out of the 10 intervals, the two observers agreed, giving a trial-by-trial IOA of 90%. This concludes the video on calculating IOA for data obtained by event recording. In the next video, we'll discuss IOA for data obtained by timing. If you would like a more in-depth study of the concepts outlined in the BACB 4th edition task list, or tutoring as you prepare for the BACB exam, please visit us at www.thebcbatutor.com. Thanks for watching.